All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Anthony Campolo, and this is episode 2 of what's this thing called? Web framework integration, I think. If you saw my stream last week, I started building out some JavaScript stuff with Dash, and we're going to be continuing that today. I learned a lot in a short amount of time about this Dash SDK and the kind of structure of the docs last time. Wrote a bunch of Node scripts that do hello, thanks for joining. So we wrote a bunch of Node scripts that can do creating and retrieving an identity, which is basically like a domain, like a Dash domain. So it was AJC web dev test.dash. So we created that and then creating a front end to basically interact with that data on the blockchain. Hello. Looks like we got people watching on YouTube and Twitch right now. Cool. Alrighty. And through the magic of ChatGPT, I already have a million front ends for this thing. It was great because it's something I used to always say is that Web3 is Jamstack by default, which basically means that you're always, because of the nature of Web3 applications, you're always going to have a fairly clear separation between your front end and your back end because there's like the blockchain and then not the blockchain. In this sense, the blockchain is the back end. But once you have kind of decoupled that and you're just calling an API, in the sense the API being the blockchain, all you have to really do then is figure out how to map that fetch call to each different front end framework. So I start with React usually because I'm a React kid. And then I was just like, ChatGPT, take this React component, turn it into a Vue component, and then it just writes it again in Vue. And I said, do it again in Svelte, do it again in Solid, in Lit, in Angular, in Alpine, and then it can do Quick. If I gave it some code examples, it probably could figure it out. And then vanilla JavaScript also. So, and then the backend is just like an Express server. So why don't I share my code so we can start looking at what's happening here. Let's see, is my screen all clear? Looks pretty good. I hope people are excited for the weekend. Happy Friday, everybody. If you got something fun you're going to be doing, let me know in the chat what you're going to be up to. Okay, that looks good. So we're going to move that here. Okay. Cool. All right. So I'm also kind of working on, I always do these blog posts called A First Look at Something. So I've got a whole lot of these blog posts, and I find that for me, it's a really good way of kind of organizing my thoughts around a subject. So I'll explain kind of what it is. This intro has also got a little help from ChatGPT. So I talk about a little bit of the history of the project and then the Dash platform, some of the different libraries we have. Let's do this. Yeah. So digital currency launched in 2014. Pretty lengthy time for a blockchain project to be around that long. That actually means it kind of came out around the same time as when Ethereum came out. EvoNet. I feel like that's why I kept seeing something that looked like that in the library name. Anyway, cool. So we learned last time that the JSON RPC is probably going to be deprecated at some point. So these examples are not as useful as they were. I thought they were going to be. But let's kind of start totally from scratch here and build up this project again. Let's call this Dash. All right, so first dependencies is we have this Dash SDK and then .env for our environment variables. And what I did in this README is I start by kind of adding in all of these scripts here. So last time, this is mostly what we were looking at is on the Dash documentation, which is at dash.org. Go to the platform, guides and documentation. And mostly it was the create and fund a wallet and then identities and names. This set of stuff is what we got now. And I modified the scripts just a little bit to make them basically output your environment variables for you. So I'll show you that in a second. Let me just grab this whole thing here. Wait, I want this here. Okay. Cool. Okay, so the scripts that we're going to be focusing on are going to be create wallet, create identity, and register name. We can also update our identity and kind of this is some other ones here about just checking, verifying information on the blockchain and top up and then okay, and then here serve. This is what serves the back end. So let's go a little ahead. Okay, and then the way I'm going to break up this project is it's going to be kind of interesting. It's going to be the scripts folder, which will be all of these just node scripts. And these will be, I usually think of this as kind of like the base implementation because it's just JavaScript code. And ideally, you can port that to wherever you need to. Well, I tried to deploy the backend on some different serverless function providers and some weird stuff happened. So right now, we're just going to be running this in an Express server. So there'll be the scripts folder, which is going to be all the node scripts. Then there'll be an API folder where I'm going to run the Express server. And that's also where I'm going to put like serverless function attempts and things of that nature. And then each different front end will have its own directory. There'll be a React directory, a Vue directory, a Svelte directory. And then ideally, there will be a root package.json, which will be used to run any of the scripts or the API, and then a second directory that will run one of the subdirectories. So then you'll have two things running at once. So if that doesn't make any sense at all, you will see very quickly what I'm talking about. Okay, let's do that and that and this. Let me actually get that in there. do that. Okay. Cool. Okay, so we were at okay, this is, so then in the scripts folder, there'll be a single file client where we're importing the Dash object and our .env configuration. And this is where we're going to configure the thing that actually talks to the Dash blockchain itself. And I'm going to be abstracting lots of environment variables in the project. So right now we're setting the network to testnet. I see that in this example here. In the examples in the documentation, there's a couple important changes that I'm making, which is they always include the client and the client configuration at the top with the script below it, whereas I have mine in its own file, and that way we're not going to get confused about how many client objects there are or what they're doing. So I think that's pretty important. And then we're setting network. I'm also using ESM here instead of require. Okay, so that seems to be pretty good. Okay, so now these first couple scripts, let's go through these quickly, are for just reading data from the blockchain. So this will be get best block hash. Let's see if that's working great. So that is running client get dappy client, and then you run core get best block hash, and then we do a little error handling here, and then we console log the data like so. So that's pretty standard. Then we got get block hash over here. And for this, you're specifying for, it was called like height, or actually no, the next one is, yeah, get blocked by height. All right, cool. And this one is, it's a buffer. So you gotta make sure to handle that correctly. Okay, so now the interesting stuff starts to happen. So we're gonna update our client. And now we're, in addition to the test network, we are adding in a wallet. And the first time we do this, there is no mnemonic because we don't have a wallet yet. We want to create a wallet from scratch. That's why we need the create wallet script. So we'll see here now, I'm going to be console logging out the exact things we're going to need to copy paste into our .env file, and makes it pretty clean and easy to deal with. So this is going to create us this new wallet, which has a wallet address and a mnemonic. And having access to this gives you access to the whole wallet and everything on it. So obviously you do not want to share it with the world on a stream, but this is all just on testnet. So no harm, no foul. Okay. So I copy paste that into .env. And then they have this testnet faucet. Go ahead and give myself some Dash. Not a robot. Let's see if that works. By the way, this is not secure. Not good. Not good. Success. Okay. And if you want to check out the Explorer, so this is where you can see what is happening on the chain of blocks. That is the blockchain. And since we just did that unconfirmed transaction, you need to put that transaction on a block and verify the block on a bunch of nodes first. If we pop this open, you can see more information. Yeah, so this is the wallet address, and then this is the transaction itself. So we will let that sit for a second. And okay. So now that we have a wallet, we are able to use that wallet to register an identity. So an identity is what's going to be basically our domain. So this is back under script. So now we're layering on a couple of other things. We have the mnemonic we're grabbing from our environment variable. And this is for letting you work with the blockchain without always having to sync the whole history and state of it. Bump that up just a little bit. That just being because when you have a blockchain that is append only, then you end up with this longer and longer basically database of information that gets bigger and bigger and more unmanageable as the years go on. So what this does is it says like, hey, ignore block this through that, because ideally it should never change anyway. So once you read it once, you should be able to kind of cache it. But now let's do the create identity. Okay, so now this is where it starts getting interesting. So I am going to do here is the identity is going to have an ID associated with it. And then we're able to use that ID to retrieve the identity or retrieve the identity ID itself. Okay, so let's just do that first. Okay. Oh, create identity first. Boom. Okay. Great. And so this is going to do the same thing where it's going to basically console log us out exactly what we need here. Okay, taking its sweet time. So this is what I was saying about why you want to sync not have to sync the whole chain. So I think that is why it's taking some time. When Evo? That's a good question. What is Evo truly, though? Okay. Let's just go ahead here while this is thinking. Something wrong here? Interesting. Oh, there it goes. Sweet. Okay, so this is now our identity ID. And you can use that to retrieve the ID or the identity. All right, that's good. That's good. AJ says the Dash Incubator will be the main driver for Dash adoption. What are you guys working on? Yeah, the Dash Incubator seems pretty sweet. That's kind of what is funding and organizing my work. And I am working on the Dash platform. Okay. Should be all good. So now we're taking the identity ID and feeding it in, and then running platform.identities.get, and then console logging out the data. And we see we get this thing here. And it looks similar to this here. So it tells us the protocol version, it gives us the ID, and then we have some public keys. Let me include this one. All right, now we got these two public keys here. And if we go back and look here, we should see that we start to have some confirmed transactions. So that's cool. We got some Dash in this wallet now. Okay, so this now will retrieve the identity ID specifically. So that's going to print us out an array with each of the IDs. So we saw here we had two public keys, each with an ID. And then top up identity. There's something called credits. I'm not super clear on. I think they might be like gas. It's kind of the first thing I thought when I saw it. Gas being how Ethereum kind of moderates demand. People can pay more gas to speed up a transaction. But that might not actually be the best example or comparison. And something called Duffs. Yeah, so something I'll have to ask Ryan about more. So cool. Great. So there, actually, we just have the one because, yeah, this is the idea is grabbing. Okay, so I'm going to skip a couple of these. I'm going to skip top up identity and go right to register name. So I'm going to create a new name now. Register name. So yeah, this is what I want to change. Or I. Okay, whatever. Okay, so Yeah, label. That's what it was. Okay, I'm second guessing myself because I had done some work yesterday that I'm not seeing now. But anyway, I had abstracted this out to its own environment variable called label, but not really that important. Let's change this to dash stream test. Yeah, a little wordy, but should be fine. Okay. And we're already feeding it our identity ID. So that's all good. And then it should output our name back to us if all went according to plan. So this is feeding the identity ID and then running get ID and then feeding in both of those things along with your new name to platform.names.register. And then we run the function, and the console defs are the same as Satoshi's in BTC. They're the base unit. Okay. So that makes sense. Still confused then what credits are and how credits have to do with all this stuff. Because that's simple. That's just cents versus dollars, you know. So on register. Yeah, so right now we're using the Dash platform name service. Cool, looks like it worked. So now we got this Dash name, which is Dash Stream Test. And retrieve name is called Duff because R, the creator of Dash, Evan Duffield. Huh, cool. Whenever I hear Duff, I just think of Duff Man. So Duff is a beer, fictional beer in The Simpsons. Okay. Retrieve name. All right. So this object here is your Dash name. Okay, that did not exactly work. This is not retrieving what I want to retrieve right now. And that's because it's resolving too. That's right here. Dash test. There we go. So this actually, I know what's wrong. I want that and this and that. That. Okay. That should do that now. Okay. Okay, not quite. Oh. Okay, I think that's where I messed up. Boom, now we're talking. Okay. So yes. Yes. Okay, so now I see this is the one we just created, Dash Stream Test. Cool. So you can kind of differentiate between these two if you want. This is the label, and then this is the domain, and then this is the Dash name. Is when you put the two of them together. Sorry, I'm gonna just grab some water very quickly. I will be right back. Okay. You see these confirmations are still ticking up over here. Okay, so those are the main things to do for interacting with the blockchain itself. So we can kind of imagine creating some sort of front end with inputs that lets you feed in this data as you go. The way I'm going to be structuring this is I started by first doing this part and having it be kind of abstracted out. And then now I just want to have a single read operation on the blockchain to basically give you back this right here. So we're going to be running this. We're going to be resolving the Dash name to get it back. And then I just want to have that be like a single, you can think of it like a unit test almost for each front end. So the first one you have React. And so you need to just have a React front end that is calling this somehow. So to do that, we're going to use this. We're going to create an Express server here. This is going to be the really interesting part because this is where I hit some roadblocks that may require upstreaming some changes into the core libraries themselves, because I was hitting issues both trying to run this in the client because of some Webpack minification error, and then also on the server side for using like serverless functions because there's a WebAssembly thing in there that was getting confused. So at this point, it seems to run nowhere, which is not tight, but because you can just run it in a server, this is kind of the simplest, most foolproof way of doing this. So I'm gonna want a server script. Yeah, just like that. Okay, great. I'm way ahead of myself. Okay, and this is our server. So this is still using the same Dash client we were using before, which is pulling in our mnemonic from here. and change that to serve. And okay, so we're creating an Express server, and then we're going to create an endpoint, which is going to be /name / and then it's going to take something, which will be your identity name, and then it feeds that name into the resolve function. So ideally, you could take any name you want and then look up someone's information. Is kind of the whole point of having some sort of domain name thingamajig dash platform name service. This is kind of a fairly generic reusable piece of functionality that has now been kind of turned into an endpoint. So this endpoint right now is just being served. We're going to serve it as an Express server on localhost. And then you can kind of extrapolate that. You could turn that, you could take that and deploy it with a Docker container. You could deploy it on a virtual machine, a Linux virtual machine on DigitalOcean, just run straight up Node on Linux. Or you could do an edge function now, Cloudflare, Dino, stuff like that. So as I was saying, I hit roadblocks both serverless functions, and which were on AWS Lambda, and then don't know if I actually tried any of the edge functions yet, but those are usually the most complicated and most recent. And we're just going to do a try catch here. So that'll give us the data back, or it will error. Okay, that's all looking pretty good. Serve this. Now, as I was saying, this basically just gives us an endpoint. So we're going to change that to dash stream test. And we should be able to both open this just in a browser. If we want, we're going to see it's just straight up JSON object. Look at that beauty. Or if we want, we can curl it like so. Back. So that's our endpoint, and that's pretty sweet, because as I was saying, now that is what allows us to then decouple this from our front end. So we have now a back end running on a server, localhost 3001, and now we're going to do this. So I need to modify this actually to create React directory. Yeah, okay. So this is where the mono repo type stuff comes into play. Okay, let's do that. And let's do this. So we're gonna have package.json. So there could be multiple ways. So there's kind of two important philosophical approaches you got to think about when you do this. Is, do you want a single package.json in the root that orchestrates everything else, or do you want a bunch of individual directories that each have their own package.json? And you can think of this as, do you want a microservice approach? Because if you're going a microservice approach, then you kind of want to figure out how to manage them all from a single package.json. But I am more concerned with creating a bunch of different examples that each would be their own project. Someone actually was going to build this, they wouldn't build a mono repo with 6 different front-end frameworks, because they're not a weirdo like me. They would just use one of them, and they would use React, or they would use Vue, or they would use Svelte. And so whatever that single directory within my larger directories, that would be their projects. So that's why I'm going the approach where I'm going to create a different package.json for each of these. So if you were to actually create a new repository, you would be able to have that be the way you would do it. Okay. And then these are the dependencies you need to add. We're going to be using good old Vite. And now I'm going to grab some of these scripts. So I'm going to want this one, these ones. Okay. That's me. Okay. Okay. Great. And I could do this with the Beat template, but I kind of like walking through the steps of actually building it piece by piece. And so it's a useful mental exercise. Okay, so we got our Beat config using the React plugin. I'm gonna just hold up. Actually, no, because I'm already in. Okay, so the scaffolds out. The main things we need, we're going to have an index.html, which is going to import from main.jsx, importing our app component. And come back to that in a second. Let's grab all of this. Okay. So this is going to create a piece of state and set it in a variable called blockchain data. Could probably give that a better name, kind of representing the fact that it's hitting this name here. Let's go ahead and change that to dash stream test. And this should still be running over here. So we know that this is still chilling. That's good. That's good. And this is the thing that I had ChatGPT write in a whole bunch of different frameworks. So this should this should be client or dev, right? That's what it was. Yep. Okay. Okay. Moment of truth. Bam. So that's how you know it worked. That's why they pay me the big bucks. So if we look in the network over here, we can see that we have these fetches happening right here. So that's fetching from here, and then it's displaying out this data like so. That stream test. And if we wanted to, we could just change the name of this to AJC Web Dev test. And then we'll get different data back here. So the React boilerplate is basically the Vite starter template. Oh, I spelled this wrong. There we go. So it's very similar to Create React App, but it's using Vite instead of Webpack. And this is pretty much the recommended way of doing this these days. I am a heretic and I'm using JavaScript and not TypeScript right now. But if you want to check out, here is basically what I'm working with here. There you go. Okay. So one crypto with the same name. What do you mean? Okay, now to kind of abstract this out a little bit into more composable functionality, I want to have a button that will allow me to actually trigger this fetch, because right now it just happens as soon as you open the page, the use effect runs, and it just gives it to you, bam. But I want to have a little more control over that. Let me do this. Let's keep it consistent. Okay. So with this now, I'm going to have a fetch data function as being put in the use effect. And then we have an on-click handler that will trigger the fetch. So now we have a separate piece of state that will hold whether we have triggered the fetch or not. And then we have another piece of state to display a little loader while it's loading. So that looks like it will be all good. Boom, boom. Good. All right, awesome. So we saw there how for a brief second it says loading, and then it gives us the data. So that's kind of like what I'm thinking of how to create like an MVP, minimum viable product. That this is what I like to do, where I want to have an end-to-end experience. Like there needs to be an app, needs to be connected to a thing. What is like the simplest possible thing I can get it to do that shows that the thing is connected to the other thing. And so this is the thing, React, connected to the other thing, Express, connected to the Dash, and great. So let's look ahead now. So I'm not going to deploy this because that part is what was breaking. But just to give you a little taste of what's to come, let's take a look at one of these other examples. So I already had some examples. Okay. There we go. Okay. I'm going to pull in view. Yep. Great. And then after I show how to do this, I'm going to log off because I'm taking the weekend off, going to a nice little place about 2 hours away with my partner. And so we want to leave in like an hour or two for that. Okay. So this is now going to view. So I got here. This is again another Vite app, and this is why Vite is super sweet, because that's what's kind of managing each of these different front end frameworks. And probably want to change these to the other ones were. Again, we have index.html, and now we have instead of having a main.jsx, it's just a main.js, which is importing our view app. And then this is like the app.jsx, so it's app.view. Make sure I save this over here. Okay. Right here. Okay. So now we have that going. We can actually run it. Let's do this. See if that all went according to plan. So now, notice how we got view there. Great. Okay. So still some things to work out with that null that it's showing in the beginning. You don't want that. But, and then did I have a loading? Yeah, I have a loader already. Great. Cool. So this is now where we can kind of see where the abstraction line happens. We have this express server running here, and then we can create as many front ends as we want that hit that endpoint, which is managing the connection to the blockchain itself. So there are going to be a whole bunch of different front end frameworks that are going to be doing this. So I've already got Svelte working along with React and Vue and Angular via analog.js meta framework. And yeah, and then I already have ChatGPT wrote me the code already for Alpine and Lit. And I've never really used either of those frameworks, so that'll take a little time for me to just get that set up. But yeah, so I'm probably there's going to eventually be some sort of repo that's going to live somewhere. It's going to have all these examples in them. And I'll talk to Ryan about what's going to be the best way to manage that. But yeah, thank you everyone who was hanging out and watching. This was super fun. I'm going to aim to do this once a week. So hopefully next week might be earlier in the week. Still kind of working out the day. It might be Wednesday, but keep an eye on the Dash Incubator YouTube and Twitch. And I am, of course, AJC Web Dev on the internet. And yeah, this will about close out for me. So have a good weekend, everybody.